Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, to the Acting Premier. On Monday, the Premier told the Legislature, and I quote, "We have an incredible policy moving forward to meet our target, the Paris Accord, of 30%. We're well on our way. We're actually going to exceed that goal." The Premier was almost certainly briefed on yesterday's report by the Auditor General ahead of time. Why would he knowingly say something that was days from being completely and utterly refuted by the Auditor General?
The Deputy Premier.
The Minister of the Environment.
And referred to the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. And we on this side of the House appreciate the work of the Auditor General. We take her recommendation seriously, and we are going to be working on it. But what she also did say, Mr. Speaker, that the focus of her recommendations is the provincial actions is needed to improve the existing plan as Ontario works towards reducing emissions. Mr. Speaker, we have an evolving plan going forward. We are listening to others as we change and infuse new technologies, new ideas towards achieving our targets. And Mr. Speaker, I'll tell the House, the Legislature right now, we will obtain our targets of 30% by 2030 in order to meet our agreement with the Paris Agreement. We are going to be making those changes, make sure our modelling is what the Auditor General is working for. But Mr. Speaker, the member opposite has yet to have his party table a plan for climate change. I'm looking forward for them to bring forward a plan. We will work together with the party once they have ideas and see how we can work together to improve our.
Thank you very much. A supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker. Thanks to the Ford government, Ontario isn't just missing crucial targets for greenhouse gas reduction. It's clear they never had any intention of hitting them. One of the Premier's first acts in office was to go to court with electric vehicle makers. One of the first acts. And yet, at least, he spent $231 million tearing down wind farms and ripping up clean energy contracts. Yet the Ford government somehow managed to count both of these cancelled initiatives towards their greenhouse gas reduction goals. Was this incompetence, or was this ignoring reality?
Minister.
Thank you again, member opposite, for that question, Mr. Speaker. Listen, the Auditor General also said the climate change plan that was put out is an estimate of what the emissions are today and what will be the reductions. And we're saying that more work needs to be done to develop the ways in which emissions can be reduced further. Mr. Speaker, we moved out with an ambitious plan last November. We have listened to the Auditor General. This plan is going to evolve. It's going to change year to year. That is what's going to make us reach those reductions in targets. Mr. Speaker, we need to move away from the partisanship the members opposite like to play with the climate change issue. Work together in order to get our climate change. We're looking for ideas from the other side of the House. We're going to be touring the province and listening to the people across the province. We're going to continue to work with stakeholders, listening to the Indigenous communities, working with the Green Party. We'd love to work with the NDP Party, Mr. Speaker, but we want to attain those targets. It's too late to wait for them to come up with a plan. We want action now. We're going to make sure it happens, Mr. Speaker.
The final supplementary.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the terrible reality, again to the Premier, terrible reality is that Ontario does not have a real plan to confront the climate crisis. Around the world, national leaders and everyday people are pushing governments to take action on the climate crisis. Around the world, every day. The stakes could not possibly be higher, and the Premier couldn't take them any less seriously. When is the Premier going to stop the cuts, stop attacking efforts to clean up our energy system, stop citing climate denial blogs, stop wasting money on stickers that don't stick and lawsuits that can't win, and put together an honest plan to tackle the climate emergency that we face? At the very least, when will he be able to hit the climate reduction targets the government says they plan to hit?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we will hit our climate change emissions targets by 2030, as we've said over and over. Mr. Speaker, one of the solutions we have out there is expanding transit in this province and building the $28 billion worth of transit in Toronto. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite don't agree with that. They've been vocal against the building of the Ontario line, Mr. Speaker. Those are clear solutions. Mr. Speaker, we are moving towards 15% renewable content in our fuels. We have our Ontario emissions performance standards waiting for approval from the federal government. We have a green bond, $1.7 billion raised to go towards improving transit, not only here in Toronto, but in Ottawa, in Hamilton, in London, building new roads up in Northern Ontario to get them around. We have a new advisory council on climate change to give us the best information so people become resilient and adapt to the changes in climate change that are happening today, Mr. Speaker. We're making sure that people can be protected. We want Ontarians to be participatory in our climate change plan. They need to make the changes. We need to make changes. We're going to work together and get this deal done, Mr. Speaker. We will reach our 30%.
Thank you. Thank you. Stop the clock.